Hello, this is Heidi Coleman, and today's title is Domestic Violence Victims Behind Bars. I'm here to inform specifically my audience about the history of violence among female victims, how it's a heavily gender-based crime, and how it's led many women to jail. Firstly, the history and growing percentage of domestic violence proves how it's been social issues since decade. People need to be more aware and educated on how to deal with a healthy relationship and how to get out of an unhealthy one. Many need to also know that consequences are not just suffered by victims, but also the perpetrators and bystanders, such as children. It is important to better implement programs that will decrease the rate of domestic violence, especially females, which help prevent less abuse, less crime rates, and more security for women. To begin, during my first quarter of college, I took a class called Intro to Sociology. And this class offered a field trip to a rehabilitation center in Chino Hills, rehabilitation center for women. And we were given the opportunity to meet face-to-face with female inmates, specifically victims of domestic violence. And what was special about this trip is that they had no cuffs. They were sitting right next to us and just sharing their stories like normal people. And it's crazy because you felt the impact and you heard their experience and you see the negative results of domestic violence that it had on the women. Also, domestic violence can happen to anyone. If you are in a toxic relationship yourself, or if you know somebody who was in, or also a child of domestic violence, then you definitely can relate to this topic. I personally have seen many partnerships that are considered domestic violence, and as also a foster child, I attended court and met many other children who know what it is, and as well meeting these women on that prison trip gave me more insight. Domestic violence is increasing, especially that more are staying home due to the COVID. But by helping people get out of the unhealthy relationship, it will help decrease the statistics of abuse, drug use, homelessness, foster children, prison numbers, and just basically create more stability within more households. As mentioned before, lessening the statistics of domestic violence will prevent less abuse, less crime, and more security for women. To start off, I will provide practical information and the statistics of domestic violence, specifically female inmates. My first source is Louise Kurtz, Spreading the Word, California Sure launches program to stop domestic violence, 1997. States domestic violence is the leading cause of injury to women in the U.S., with almost 4 million of women physically abused by their husbands or boyfriends every year. Wow. It results in hundreds of millions of dollars in healthcare costs that annually that are borne by employers' benefit programs. This shows that the numbers are no joke. And also, I remember being first introduced to domestic violence when attending court as a child. And my interest grew deeper recently because I physically see the results of domestic violence, because as placed in a foster care home, I see the increased demand for my foster mother to bring in new children because they are suffering under abusive parents. Domestic violence is abuse that leads to other types of abuse. Obviously, abuse among the two partners, then drug abuse or criminal abuse or child abuse. According to New York Post, their response to the following spike of domestic violence situations, they decided to put out posters and national helplines to just create more public awareness of this issue and to offer emotional support, at least from the distance. This deliberate plan for New York to better support victims shows that this is a grave situation to be dealing with, and this is the type of focus that is needed from the government. The National Helpline is a starting point, but the emotional support is just not enough. As I introduced before, domestic violence is further on becoming an issue in homes, especially that more are staying inside, and there's less options to good decisions, if you know what I mean. And my other article of Mary Gilfus, and her title, Mary, Women's Experience of Abuse as a Risk Factor for Incarceration, 2002. She states violence perpetrated against women and girls can put them at risk for incarceration by forcing abused girls and women into the criminal justice system, not as victims but as offenders in the eyes of the state. So, to give an example, when I visited a female inmate, one of the women there, they committed an act that was not considered self-defense. But in some eyes, obviously, you do. For example, she was sitting in a car. Her boyfriend was physically abusing her right there in front of another friend, and she decided to take action and stab him in the neck, which landed her in jail. The author further elaborated that the processes that transform victims into offenders are the criminalization of women's survival strategies, entrapment into crime by abusers, and by gender, race, and class oppression. The meaning of this is to many women who have been or are in an abusive relationship will most likely end up in jail. For example, just exactly I used a female inmate. She was not considered self-defense, but that's the action she needed to take. Many were not protected by self-defense, for it was committed out of rage and fear at most. And the issue with this is that the DV has led to many other crimes from the perpetrators committing to the victims as well. To add on from Gilfis includes research shows that the overwhelming majority of women defendants in criminal justice system have extensive histories of childhood and adult abuse that may result in homelessness, substance abuse, and economic marginality that force them into survival by illegal means. I can sure for credit the statement because, once again, my visits to the female center proved this to be true for most inmates, did exactly stated similar statements. Many of the females were in horrible relationships and did take certain actions that did land them in jail. To continue with more DV cases defended, criminality should be more avoidable, which should help bring more stability at home. With less female victims having to rely on illegal activities to survive, they would need the necessary programs to offer that help. And my last source, Ellie Hager, Coronavirus Leaves Foster with Nowhere to Go 2020, states that already struggling parents are losing jobs and feeling more financially desperate than ever. They're also packed in close quarters for days on end as quarantine sets in. And with the coronavirus, they can't call on elderly grandmothers or aunts to come help with childcare. This relates to the majority of the population going through similar experiences, and the problem, this leaves more space and tension to shift anger towards partners and to children as well. With the coronavirus, also the foster care system is failing heavily, and there is less support, financial support, and also less homes for children to go to, which most children that come from here come from domestic violence homes. To conclude, overall domestic violence is spiking with female victims that is causing other problems such as foster care placement, drug abuse, and other crimes. By delivering more resource programs for females, it will be more to able to receive more support and choose healthier lifestyles. Once again, with more public attention to domestic violence, it will decrease the rate of abuse, less crimes, and more security for women. And to not end off with my visual aid,